Hello and welcome to Newsmakers for this Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. I'm Louie Butko. Thanks for joining us. And today we're talking about a bit of an anomaly when it comes to the local media. In a time where newsrooms and radio stations are closing across the country, Fort Erie Radio is going against the grain and throwing their hat in the ring. A 24/7 online radio station and active newsroom had their grand opening this spring and have been reporting from the southern Niagara town ever since. And on today's show, I'm very pleased to be joined by the program director and morning show host, Brent Jones. And Brent, I guess that's my first question is, you see all these radio stations closing by these giant companies. What makes you think that you can do the job?
I think maybe that is precisely the reason we can do the job, is because we are not one of the big companies, as you noted. I'm a firm believer that news media needs to be local. It needs to be live. It needs to be happening in your local community. And I think, if anything, that's a competitive advantage. I think it'd also be fair to say that, one of the other things that we do really well here is that we work with people who live and work in our local community, both in terms of our reporting staff, our broadcasters. So it gives us an opportunity to really be, feet on the ground with what's happening in our town.
No, it's funny. I was talking to the mayor of St. Catharines a couple of weeks ago here at CH. Just, a casual conversation. He's a Niagara guy. Obviously, I'm a Niagara guy. And I had mentioned Fort Erie Radio because Chris Dubé had posted something, caught my attention. And, I worked at CKTB, so all these local reporters, you get familiar with each other's names. And it was just sort of like, have you seen this Fort Erie Radio thing? And it seems like that's the conversation I'm having. You've been word of mouth. Like I said, you had your grand opening a few months ago, but take us back to getting this up and going. How did you do it?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Chris Dubé, who's one of our reporters here at Fort Erie Radio, but this all started with the loss of our paper. We had the Post, a Metroland paper, forever and ever in the town of Fort Erie. Lost that paper last year and ended up in, what I think the term is news desert, a bit of a news desert here. And what it actually created was an opportunity with a lot of reporters in the region who are looking for work. Luke Edwards being another example of a reporter we work with here locally who covers council meetings for us in Fort Erie. In many ways, it was a perfect storm to say, okay, I think for a town of our size and a town that's growing the way that it is, I think it's important and responsible that we have proper news coverage. And we are now doing the thing, daily local news coverage in a way that this town hasn't had before. So this project was not born out of, some sort of deep history on my part being involved in broadcasting or news journalism. That's not the case. It was just one of those things where I thought, the shortcomings maybe that I have in skill sets, I can hire out for. And there was sort of this perfect storm of talent available at the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Luke Edwards, like I said, Chris Dubé, names very familiar with in the Niagara reporting circles. Your background, you're a real estate agent. So, like you said, you're not a broadcast guy. How and why, I guess, is the question. Why, Brent?
Well, real estate doesn't really tie into what we're doing here at Fort Erie Radio at all. What you find is that most realtors, the more you sort of pull back the layers, they have a lot of different projects on the go. And one of my core beliefs as a realtor, predominantly working in the town of Fort Erie, is that a good realtor should be a good community ambassador. If you're not willing to take care of the people where you live in your community, you probably have no business being in real estate. So many years ago, I started a podcast called the Fort Erie Podcast that was a weekly show, and it focused on things that were good and happening in our community. And I got sort of a love of being behind the mic. I enjoyed it, met a lot of people through doing that show, a lot of local community leaders, small business owners, some of our service clubs and other things we have in town. And one of the things that's always impressed me in the time that I've lived in this area is that Fort Erie is not just a community of communities with Ridgeway, Crystal Beach, Stevensville, all being part of the same municipality, but it's a whole community of neighbors taking care of neighbors, people taking care of people. And I've lived pretty well the whole way around the Golden Horseshoe at one time or another in history. And I've never lived in a community that is so focused on helping other people. And where there is so much happening that very often I feel like does not get the attention or the spotlight that it deserves.
So what has been the biggest challenge, I guess? It's a lot of work getting something like this up off the ground. 24/7 online radio station. I'm sure there's music licensing you got to worry about. There's a lot of things that need to happen to get a radio station off the ground. You've been doing great work, but what is some of the challenges you found yourself running into?
Well, the challenges sometimes are just the number of hours in a day. I think you alluded to earlier that 2024 is not the time most people jump in with both feet and say, "Hey, this is the time to start a news media company." Like if you were, there are faster ways to say fame and fortune in 2024 than pursuing news media. But I think the challenges just comes down to doing everything sort of in step, if that makes sense. There's a lot of, and I want to try to be careful not to reveal too much of my bias here, but there tends to be a lot of funding, let's say, available for some of the larger media players on a national level. And I'm sure you can appreciate, with CHCH being an independent media outlet as well, that, it's a little fewer and farther between the smaller you go and the more local and the more remote you go. So there's a lot of time and effort involved in sort of balancing all the buckets. There's the journalism, the news piece of the business. There is the broadcasting piece, as you alluded to, comes with a whole variety of not just tech issues, but I mean, booking guests and licensing and those types of things and keeping things topical on air. But then, of course, there's the advertising piece of it and working with local businesses and local sponsors. So a lot of it is just juggling a lot of different plates. And as you're first growing and starting out, a lot of things sort of need to come together at the right time and in the right place. For instance, we launched with 5 broadcasters when we first got on air back in May, added 3 more to our roster within the past month, offers some additional programming throughout the week. But it's a number of those factors coming together, sort of right place and right time.
So those are the challenges, not enough hours in the day. That sounds like a pretty big one for sure. But when it comes to points of pride, what in these last few months has gotten you to stop and really forget about all those stressful nights, to remember, maybe the reason why you started this or even why you started the podcast back in the day? What are some of those moments in the last few months since getting this thing off the ground?
Well, I mean, God, there's almost too many to mention. I mean, it's the news media is something I'm very, very proud of, because although, we previously had the Fort Erie Post, we had the Fort Erie Times until about 2017. We've had news coverage in this town before. We still have the Fort Erie Observer as a biweekly publication. This town has never had news on this scale with daily, local, comprehensive news coverage. And that's something that we've accomplished that hasn't been done before, to the best of my knowledge, in Fort Erie's history. So I'm very proud of the news reporting that we're doing and the caliber of reporting that we have. But we've been a part of some big events, from having local bands and musicians in here, performing, special broadcasts, to, interviews with celebrities like Maddie Matheson, where we've had a conversation with Maddie that's, on our news website, where we've worked with, Cows Come Home is a show that is filming right now in our town, and we've had the good fortune of being able to work with that cast and crew and have Katie and Lindsay here on the morning show. I think it's hard for me to pinpoint one thing, because there have been so many good things that have happened as a result of this. And it's funny, is most people in 2024 think about, how can I declutter my inbox? I've got too many emails. I got too many subscriptions. The number of sheer compliments that we receive from people who receive our weekly news roundup delivered to their inbox. I mean, an email that people actually want to open, I think is something else. Some of the listener engagement we've had from contests and different things and giveaways we've run on air, that, having a full roster booked of guests, of people who want to come in and share their story, and having programming that is focused uniquely on local voices. These have all been huge pride points. And even when you don't have a ton of hours in the day, you feel really good about the stuff you have been able to accomplish.
Well put. Let's talk about the news media part of that, because I have said in 2024, I've been a journalist for about 10 years. In 2024, it is both harder every day to be a journalist. It's harder to be online as a journalist. Why jump in to a business that can be so harsh at times, that can be so demanding at times? You, like I said, you got a pretty sweet real estate gig, but why put your hat in this ring?
Because I wanted to get rich, obviously. That's why I got into news media.
Oh, yeah. The secret's out. Ah, damn.
Yeah,
the secret's out, Brent.
That's where the money is for sure. No, the answer for me was very simple, is that I think it's important. I think one of the things that, and we need to work on this and develop it more, but I implemented last spring, because we had our news website was launched prior to us actually having broadcasters on air through the internet radio piece. And one of the programs that I began working to develop was to create opportunities for student journalists at our local schools like Greater Fort Erie Secondary and Fort Erie International Academy to say, hey, I would like to create opportunities for young people to take an interest in journalism. It's no secret that a lot of the big players have had have made some pretty significant cuts, layoffs in the past little bit. And it is becoming a situation where Fort Erie is the rule, not the exception, in the sense that we became virtually a complete news desert. And, it was one of those things where I thought this is something that I feel I could take on my shoulders and I could help to restore to this town. I think it's, maybe this is getting too high level, but I think it's one of those items that's important for democracy, is to have an informed citizenry that know what's happening. When we have, we've got a great council here in the town of Fort Erie, but if nobody's talking about what's being discussed at Fort Erie council meetings, it doesn't do a whole lot of good to people living in this town. So that's just one example, one piece, but I think it's important for people to be informed, not just of the big national issues, not just of the international headlines, not of the clickbait stuff, but what's happening in your own backyard. Because it is amazing to me how many people could tell you about, what happened during the vice presidential debate the other night, but they couldn't tell you what happened at their own town's council meeting, or they couldn't tell you about the project happening down at the waterfront. They have no idea. And I think that, I think a lot of the solutions to problems that we face at a local level sometimes just comes from having lack of access to local useful information.
You mentioned your weekly newsletter, which will get people the link before we're gone here. But more to that, the reaction from just the public that you've gotten, what has it meant to you? And then again, those sleepless nights, those stressful days, what has it meant to you to get that feedback from residents who, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't realize I'm here because I saw it on you. Like, we get it here, but what for you personally, what does that mean to what you do?
There's kind of two answers to that question, because it has a lot of personal meaning to me. But at the same time, I don't like to take a lot of the personal credit, because it's very much a team effort. As I mentioned, we have 8 broadcasters, we have 2 journalists, we have an account manager. It's not just me who's doing all the things. We have a great team who's making this happen, and a locally based team. The requirement to be a broadcaster of Fort Erie Radio is not that you have a tremendous amount of broadcast experience. It's that you have a tremendous amount of Fort Erie experience. That's what we're looking for in people to work with. So I certainly don't want to take all the credit for saying, hey, this is what it means to me, that the thing that I've done. But for me personally, it is gratifying to see the hard work and the effort pay off, to see a team come together to do what we've been able to do in a relatively short period of time. One of the questions we commonly get is about being an internet radio stream that we don't have a terrestrial broadcast. And my answer to that has always been, well, how many people have an AM/FM radio outside of their car? Most people don't. If they're at home, they're using some sort of digital streaming device anyway. And if you're in your car, your phone connects to your car anyway. So we're not at a major disadvantage in that sense. And going through the data for the past month, approximately a third of Fort Erie households tuned in last month to Fort Erie Radio at least one time, which is a relatively short period of time. And I think it speaks to the need to have something that is truly local and happening in our community. Where I don't want to take it too much further than that, just to not to dig myself, sort of back myself into a corner with that one, but to truly have a live local broadcast happening here in our town, I think has been really significant for people.
What would this being successful look like to you? Is it already there? What would success look like for Fort Erie Radio?
That's a big question. I think what we've done already has been a success, not just for us as a team, not just as a news media company, but I think for our community has been a success, has been a win. But I mean, long term, there's still growth. There's still more airtime, that we need to make sure we have covered. I think we can go deeper on some of our local stories. I think there's certainly room to keep developing and adding to our journalism talent. And I certainly think there's a lot of listeners / readers, audience, in Fort Erie that we haven't reached yet, that maybe aren't fully aware or exposed to us. They either, maybe have not acquired the app, or they have, and maybe they haven't opened it. Maybe they've scanned a news story on our website. They found it through Google, but they haven't fully made the connection. And some of it too, success-wise, is differentiation. One of the things that's difficult starting any new media outlet, news or otherwise, is sometimes the confusion factor in a small town, where people go, well, aren't you such and such station, or aren't you connected to this or that? And you go, no, we're a new thing. And I love this town. I think it's pretty evident nobody starts Fort Erie Radio because of a disdain for the place they live. But it is sometimes the case that things can take a little longer to catch on in smaller towns where things have always been sort of a certain way, if that makes sense. So I think part of us, for our success long term, is going to be not just the flash in the pan, but the staying power of being Fort Erie's local source for news, rock, and local talk.
Brent, like I said, my parents have a cottage up there in Crystal Beach. I plan on staying. I'm off next week, so I plan on staying. Plan on coming by, saying hi. But I also need a hidden gem sandwich shop in Fort Erie. What do you got for me? I need. I love a good sandwich. So if I'm coming by next week, where do I got to stop?
Can I give you 2? Give
me 2. Yeah, I'm there. I might be there all week, so 2's good. Yeah.
All right. So directly across the street from us, there's a coffee shop called Little Red Coffee. They have some fantastic. I just actually had a sandwich from them. The sandwich is called the Peace Bridge, so named after the Peace Bridge here. It's a turkey sandwich, but I recommend stopping in there for coffee and a sandwich. Crafted 1885 has great subs and smashed brisket burgers on Dominion Road as well. So either of those, you will not be disappointed.
All right, buddy. Looking forward to stopping in and saying hi next week. Thanks for doing this. Really excited about what you're doing. You're doing great work there, man. Keep it up.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That is Brent Jones. He is the program director for Fort Erie Radio.ca. Check him out. A brand new 24/7 local radio station. And they got a great news outlet there as well. So great talking with Brent. I want to thank him for joining me today. I want to thank you as well, because we could not do the show without your support. And while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you. I want to thank Mike Corsten for directing today's show. I want to thank Aaron McCormick as well. And one more time, thank you for listening. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.